All right, I'm making this video for another Nuka doctor here, but we're gonna be showing how to replace the little cams that are in the locking mechanism on the hip calipers. Okay, so if you have an anatometer that's older than you, like me, then sometimes these become really loose and they'll go almost all the way around. They'll essentially, if you take it apart, you'll see that it's ground a rut into there, and it's just gotten too loose. It won't lock. It's very frustrating, especially on bigger patients. The sort of springs apart. It doesn't have that locking mechanism. So I had a local machinist, actually somebody who works at my wife's company, got him some cases of beer and a couple greenbacks, and so he made me a couple sets of these. Okay, so you do have to make sure they fit in just right, and so I'm gonna show you how to take apart the anatometer to assess if they need to be replaced, and then how to put the new ones back in. So the first thing we're gonna do, you gotta take off this nameplate here on the anatometer. It helps if you lock everything in place. And I'm just using an Allen wrench that is Imperial. It's like 1/8 of an inch, but it's not metric, so FYI. So there's two just right here. You just need to take this off just to simply be able to see these gear mechanisms in the middle. That's gonna be more important later. Try to set everything aside in an organized way, because I have lost screws before. You drop one down, gets lost in the carpet. It's not a lot of fun. Next, you just want to kind of like cock it on the side and on the back here of the caliper part, this part that moves. When you take it all the way up or all the way down is when it exposes the Allen head back here. And it's the same 1/8 inch size. So what I do is I tip it up, I lock it. I'm gonna do this one and the bottom one over here, and then we'll switch sides. Okay, so I've taken the 4 Allen screws that are on the back side here off, and so now this thing is loose, and I'm not sure how other anatometers work, because I think there could be some uniqueness to one this age. There are 2 smaller Allen bolts that you can take off on the back here of, the 2 Allen bolts on the back of this end plate right here. That will ultimately, they're not actually attached to the hip level. They're attached to the rods, and you really need to leave them on the rods anyway. So for this project, I leave them on, and I found that what's holding these on right now is just the fact that these are sort of plugged into this metal piece right here, and you don't need to loosen these pieces right here. That's actually the bolts that are mounting this box to the back. So I know this is going to look crude, but you essentially just kind of slide it and hammer it almost a little bit. You can see that one came loose already, and then they both come off. Now mine always comes off with like 1 rod, and 1 rod stays on there, and I think that's maybe a unique part. Some of them maybe stay connected. I think at one point, yeah, what happened, the reason that happens is we lost one of those little things. I probably could go to Home Depot today and replace that, maybe. I might do that, but there's a little eyelet in there. You want to be really careful with these though, because I'm sure these little sawtooths are probably irreplaceable, and they're only attached by 1 little rivet right there. So it's okay to do the staying on the gears and kind of hammering it out, but just make sure when you take it out, you're not like torquing on it or bending it. So I'm just gonna put these down for a minute. Now, with one of these, what you can see is this is the back side of it. So here's the mechanism. If you just take this out, this is one that's intact. There's 2 bolts back there. You can see 2 bolts are in, and the 2 bolts I already took out to take it off of the hip level are off, okay? Now what that does is it opens up this cam, right? So I just pulled that out, and there's the old cam there. Okay, so you can see this is the oldest cam. You can see that nice rivet right into it. Here's a newer one I've had made. It's already starting to wear in, and you know, this supposedly is a really strong steel, but I guess the steel in this toggle is just like a little bit stronger. So it is gonna eventually wear out, but this is gonna take a long time. You know, it's just kind of scratching the surface. That's really just where it's etched, where it's locking in. And comparatively, this one, it's like, you kind of see it on the camera when I get the reflection right. You can see that's really gouged in there. This is more or less a scratch. This is what a brand new one looks like, right? So they just have ground it down. And it's really important that if you have these made, you know, it fits the size. That's the radius of these rods, right? And then this has a roundness to it, even though it looks like rectangular, because that's what it has to, you know, essentially it's gonna go inside here, put this in. So now, you know, that's how it's gonna slide in, right? Now it just wants to hang down on its own though. So that actually, you can see, is not a full circle. And there's a little bit of a trick to getting this back on here, okay? So one problem I've had with these cams, although they are machined really well, and the radius, which is probably like, you know, the most technical part, that fits onto the rod just right. They're probably like 1 millimeter too tall. And, you know, it's just been tricky working with my machinist to get it just right. So a lot of times I put it in, it fits, and then I can't get it to get the rod, you know, essentially I can't get the rod all the way through. What I found was if I get a little, I can get a little bit more space on the toggle if I take off this little post. And this post, all it does is it holds the little, you know, toggle locking mechanism up a little higher. You can still get your hands on it. And I've had to do this on the other side because I already had one of these. Don't drop your screws. I already had one of these done. So I'm gonna try this again. I had to get off camera to see if I could fit the rods in. It's just a lot of parts going on again. Being very, very careful with this one. This is why I just would rather take my time with it. So I'll be right back. All right, so I had to go get the little cam remachined because it wasn't fitting into the hole quite right. So, you know, this little cam is right there between my fingers. It will sit in here and it should just drop right in. So that was one of the problems, it wasn't going in super smooth. And then if it's a little bit too tall or high, I was having trouble getting it to be able to snap down on the, or actually, sorry, be able to even go down because of the sort of little like a lock or height mechanism right here, right? So for a while, I've actually had to operate without even one of those on there because my first iteration of getting this machine was so tight that it literally would lock from horizontal essentially, right? So it just wasn't a good fit. Now getting this on is a little bit tricky because again, this is the most delicate part that I have between my fingers here. You can't take that off and you definitely don't want to drop it or ding it on anything. And when you go down this hole, you can't just slide this straight in, but essentially this is where it's gonna go. Make sure you have it the right side up. The dongle on the toggle should be pointing the same direction as the arrow here, which is where you get on the slider. Okay, so that's gonna make it best for when you get it set up in the next step. I've installed it wrong a few times, then you have to restart this whole process. So I have it in here, but it won't go any further because this is trapped down. So it's a process of sort of maneuvering it, and you can't just like hold this straight up because that's like the most pressurized position, right? So you kind of have to like leave it down on the side and sort of shake it a little bit. Sorry, I know you can't really see this on camera. Okay, so it like, you kind of just have to fight it and not drop it. It just sort of popped in finally. I just had to shake it and vibrate it and sort of turn it on the side. I don't have any better advice than that. It's like a little alligator wrestling match here. So now it's in, this thing is set. We're good to go, it locks. And so right there is the locked position. I can't pull this out any further. Right there, nice and slidey. So now I'm gonna do the other one. Okay, so I got the other one in, another little wrestling match there. But it's here, I have space, so it essentially can sit above the little riser there. And when I just go up just a little bit, nice and locked there. Nice and easy to unlock it. Remember, this is the one for my machine. I think I'm missing a little hex bolt or whatever you call that little thing that goes in there. And so when I pull it off, this one in this side comes off with just this one bar. The other one is, you can kind of see in the lower corner there, is still on the machine. So now I'm going to show you how to line it up. This is essentially in some ways a calibration. You'll know if you do it wrong because the calipers won't come towards the centerpiece and touch here at the same time, okay? So the key to that is like how you line up these teeth now on the gears. And so I'm going to try to video that so you can see that. So this sort of just slides in. My rods are not ready to go in yet. They're really close. They're right there. And then this one, I have to get close at the same time. So I'm going to start sliding that one in. This one, one goes high, one goes low. Again, be very gentle with these. You don't want to torque them or bend them. And then now the key is really getting both teeth lined up on those wheels at the same time. And so I'll show you a close-up of that in a second here. But right now I'm just going to focus on this myself. So essentially you have to when you're bringing the teeth in, you have one on the top and one on the bottom, and you want them to hit the wheels at the same time. So when this one's coming in and it starts to touch this wheel, this one needs to be threaded along that wheel and about to touch this one. And you really want them to touch the gears at the same time, and yet the pins aren't quite in yet. So that's when you just gotta kind of line them up and then slowly squeeze from the side, and maybe even have a second set of hands that could line the pins up so that they just go into the shaft. And I'm just squeezing from the side over here and compressing those pins into place right there. And then once this lines up right there, you'll be able to see the screw holes. And then from there, you can kind of tap and wiggle it and get it in closer. But first thing you want to check before you go and reattach anything is, and it's not fixed yet, but it can move, it can slide. And so you want this to touch in at exactly the same time. And sometimes if you don't get those teeth right, you'll come in and one will be like off and the other one will be touching, and you can't go any further. So essentially you're always going to have a pelvis off center if that's the case. So you got to make sure that hits perfect. Here's the good news. You shouldn't have to recalibrate any other parts of the machine because we haven't dismantled any of the housing here. So from what I've seen, and I've checked it with a calibration unit when I had one in hand, that I took this whole thing apart to see exactly how it all worked and put it all back together just for funsies. And that's when we figured out like where some of the things were not working, why this wasn't catching. And now you can see really easy. I can slide it. It's pretty firm. That'll loosen up a little bit with time, I think. But that's good. Actually, we'd rather have a little more resistance there, and then just a little bit of pressure, and that's enough to lock it, which is great because I've got big hands, I can handle this, but I've had other doctors, Dr. Mariah's here right now with smaller hands, and she has a tough time keeping this clamped right on the top of their iliac crest and lifting that up easily, because before it was like, you'd have to really crank it up and to make it lock. And so this should make it so that they're not popping off people. We're able to get good readings, because if you're not reading all three at the same time, you're not really seeing that 3D postural distortion, right? So last step here is just to put all the screws back in, right? Should have 6 little black screws, 4 long ones, 2 short. The 2 short ones are gonna go on the nameplate on the front, and the 4 long ones are gonna go on the back. And you'll just line them up one at a time, and I can see I'm gonna have to do a little bit of tapping here just to get it set so my threads are gonna catch. And honestly, this part's easy. So like I said, you just make sure it's touching in the middle and locking properly before you fix this in, because this is the last chance before having to take it all apart again. So good luck with that.